Hello and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are glad to be back across the Pacific Ocean, back in the United States, streaming from Team Abode Professional. I'm sorry, I haven't done this in a while. I've been off, but streaming from the Team Abode podcast studio, Needham Abode podcast studio.
You got it.
Team Needham Abode podcast studio. Finally, you can tell I'm a little bit rusty. I'm used to being in Australian time and had to sleep in today because we're still getting used to the time change. But I am super excited to have Jim Ossman and Jessica Manuell on our podcast today to talk about organic farming. Just a little bit of history of how this happened is I was in an airport in Salt Lake City, and I saw Heinz organic ketchup in front of me. So I took a picture of it and I did a post on it. And I basically said, that organic isn't what we think it is. And I was educated a little bit on that post already, but I'm going to definitely be educated more today. And I'm hoping that the listeners and viewers can understand and not be so misled about organic, what organic is and what organic isn't. So with that being said, Jim, welcome to the show. Jessica, welcome to the show. And Jim, go ahead and tell us a little bit about your background.
I guess I'll go first.
Yes.
I'm retired. I'm happily retired. And that's pretty much it. I'm very opinionated. I stay close to agriculture, try to stay in touch. But I was in the industry from 1976 until just a few years ago. So I've been in irrigated crops, dryland crops, lived in small communities, fairly large communities, never outside a 200-mile radius of the Tri-Cities, where I was born and raised on a farm out in Block 16, just north of Pasco. I've got one son. We did spend time in Moses Lake from 1989 until 96. He went to junior high and high school there. And after that, he became a Marine, did 20 years in the Marine Corps, 2 tours in Iraq. And I'm happy to say he's got a new career in Boise, Idaho, and doing well.
I love it.
My wife and I are both in our early 70s, and we're very happy. But I try to stay involved in agriculture as much as I can. I'm way too opinionated, but I am retired.
And one thing I learned about you that was just awesome to hear is that you used to race professional motocross, which is just super cool.
Yeah, and I couldn't quit. When I turned 40, I started racing again. So eventually the hand-eye coordination goes away, Shawn. Eventually it starts to go away and you don't realize it when you're 60 feet in the air. So I had to quit at age 50, 53, I think. But I enjoyed it, and it kept me fit.
Good for you.
I had to train.
Yeah. Jessica, tell us a little bit about your history.
So grew up with livestock first, but then I was in Oregon, and when I went to college, ended up getting a job with a fertilizer chemical company there in the Willamette Valley, and changed career paths a little bit after getting into that, and was a crop advisor for a while. After a master's degree several years after that, kind of with the recession that hit everyone pretty hard up there, I got back into it, official capacity with the state, and that was okay for a while, but ended up moving to Arizona and jumping into commercial ag pretty heavy down in Yuma, doing pesticide applications and things like that for a commercial farm there that did both conventional and organic production. But now I live in Flagstaff, and it's hard to grow things here because it's cold. Like at our house, it froze last night still, and so just switched gears away from that, but still stay in contact with everybody that I've known throughout the last 25 years of life.
And speaking of that, tell our listeners and viewers how you and I met, Jessica.
We met racing drag boats. I miss that so much, Shawn. I miss the adrenaline, but
Yeah, I miss it too. I miss being with the people and the camaraderie of building your boat and the thrash between rounds, all that fun stuff. I don't miss blowing up motors. I don't miss that part.
Oh God, no, I don't miss that expense
right
either.
Okay, so tell us, Jim, you first. Organic ketchup, is that bullshit?
You like it with worms or without?
Yeah.
I did spend some time in California, but I didn't on an advisory basis only. And I saw the tomatoes, and there's different types of tomatoes, and it's all good. It's kind of like grape juice. It's when you get it off the floor and put it in the vat, and it comes out the other end. There's going to be some things in it, but it's sterilized, and you're okay. So, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I was also in charge of registering organic products. And so I did some research on what was allowed and what wasn't. And it's very surprising. It's a professional industry, the organic industry, and it represents probably 10 to 13% on a nationwide basis of food being grown. And it has pesticides just like conventional crops. Some of those have LD50s that are well, like somewhat toxic. Used properly, they're not. Just like any pesticide, but they do have organic pesticides. And I'll give you an example on potatoes. We had to put spinosad, which is a relatively harmless insecticide that worms ingest, every 3 days to keep the worms from getting out of hand. The crop yield was 1/3 what normal conventional crop potatoes are, and they had little spots on the potatoes, and you can get over that if you can. In the potato industry, organic is not a good situation. In the wine grape industry, is just fine. Mm-hmm. So it depends on the crop. Depends on what you're faced with. You have to go through 3 years of any conventional pesticides, fertilizers. You cannot use any conventional products on that ground for 3 years, and then you can get certified to go organic. And then on average, your yield is going to be half what it is in normal crops. So as you can see, the land required for us to go a lot higher in organic usage it's just not feasible. So we are where we are. The percentages haven't changed much in a few years, maybe 1 or 2% up, depending on the crop. And there'll always be a place for it as long as the price is there. And growers do things based on profit. They don't. Growers that make their living raising crops do it for profit. It's not a way of life. People want to think that it is, but they do it for profit. So there's got to be money in it. And sometimes there is. Sometimes it's double the price. Sometimes half the yield. And you can rotate certain ground to, if you know your ground, you can make organic work for you.
Okay, good. Now, Jessica, what are your thoughts on that?
They're not all that dissimilar, to be honest, at all. And I think a lot what started this when I read your first post was the stark contrast of people commenting and not realizing what organic meant. And Jim is exactly right. Like, you can use pesticides on organic produce, organic crops. People don't realize that. They think that there's nothing that's used. They think that everything has to be non-synthetic, which there's actually several synthetic options that can be used in pinch hit situations if necessary, if all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. They actually strawberries being one. Like, I don't even, Jim, do you know, are they still allowing methyl bromide use in organic strawberries, or is that gone now? So I know not too long ago.
I believe that's gone, but I don't know. I was down there in Ventura County years ago, and I watched fumigation. That's why I went down. But I don't think so.
Okay. Several years ago when I was in this, I was surprised that was a practice that could happen. Kind of mind-boggling, especially as being someone who was in charge of growing your conventional lettuce 100 feet away from an organic field. Sorry, my daughter is probably going to make some noise.
No need to apologize.
And it's just, you're growing a different variety of lettuce, but 100 feet apart, and one is certified organic and the other one is not. And you apply your products based on that field, based on the wind, based on the whole kind of a bunch of different factors and stuff, and just wash your equipment really well in between. And when I told people that's what we're doing, that's what we sell to Costco, Sam's Club, Safeway, they just couldn't believe that was happening.
So what about glyphosates? Glyphosates, am I saying that right?
Glyphosate?
Yeah.
Glyphosate, right. Yeah, Roundup. So can Roundup be used on organic crops?
No.
Okay. What about timing? Does timing have anything to do with pesticide and herbicide use on organic crops? About when it's applied, when it's harvested?
So I remember, Jim, is it okay if I speak on this? I remember this conversation on your post. Timing does not make a difference. Like if you apply a organic certified product to that field, to that crop at any time, then that crop is not organic anymore. Like Jim mentioned earlier, you have to go through 3 years of organic product use, non-synthetic product use on that crop before you can become certified. And once you stray from that at any point in time, then that crop is no longer certified organic. So the timing is not the thing. Each product, each chemical has a timing specific for each crop, each use. But making it organic or not, that's the timing doesn't have anything to do with it.
Okay. And Janet, what questions do you have for them?
Well, does it matter per state, or is this across the country?
National organic certification is national. It's national. Okay. And each state, Washington State, for example, has a group of people in Olympia that come out and certify they look at the field once a year, make sure they go through all your records, and you have to have that done in order to raise organic crops in the state of Washington.
And so what's the deal with organic ketchup? I mean, is that real? Is that mislabeling? Is there such thing as organic ketchup? Were the tomatoes organic? I mean, is that what it is?
Well, there's the seal. You probably know this better than I do, but there's different organic seals that you can use. And ketchup, I can't address that. I don't know for sure, but no, it can't say organic unless it is.
Right.
I'm sure that
I think that's a confusion though. Kind of like what you're alluding to is that there's different kinds of labeling for organic. Is that kind of what you're saying?
No, there's national organic practices, national organic standards. There's a standard nationwide, but each state has to do that, and that requires staffing and a lot of people. And you can be assured in the state of Washington, I know that if it says organic on the label, it is organic. But that doesn't mean that pesticides weren't used.
Right.
There are plenty of organic pesticides, and EPA does not. You don't have to register those pesticides with EPA. In conventional crops, you do. So you might say that there's maybe less of a overwatch on those kind of things, but I don't think that's true. There's enough people in the state of Oregon and Washington, keeping an eye on it, that you can be assured that it is organic. It's whether or not you believe that it's more nutritious. I think that's the bottom line.
Okay, so what's your opinion?
I'm sorry.
What's your opinion about organic versus non-organic? Do you eat organic stuff?
The nutritional value is no different.
And what about contaminants or amount of toxins in it because of the herbicides and pesticides?
Okay, I'm going to address this briefly, and then I'm going to turn it over. 99.5% of the tests that USDA does are very clean. It's well below the tolerances EPA sets. Your food is safe. Now, if you want to cherry pick the data, which is what some of the folks have done, that they call it the dirty dozen, you can go in and rework the data. But if you want to use EPA's safeguards, which is 100 to 200x safety factor, then your food is safe. But you can read anything you want. And I'll just leave it at that. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Jessica, you go.
I was Googling some stuff last night because I couldn't sleep because I have an almost 2-year-old. And there was like Kaiser Permanente. That's a big deal. I remember they're all over the Pacific Northwest. They still have misleading information on their website regarding organic pesticide and it being healthier for you. Whole Foods talks about the myths surrounding all of this, and it gets to the bottom on whether it's more nutritious or not. They address like whether some kind of a crop can produce polyphenols, but they never address whether it's more nutritious or not. It's seriously a wash. I believe, after seeing and being a part of growing both, that, soil health depends on your inputs as a farmer. And in some cases, the organic farmer's soil might not be healthier than a conventional farmer's soil. It's just about your inputs and about how you treat it and the crops. So nutritionally, I don't think there's a difference at all. We consume both in our household. It's kind of what's available. And my daughter has she's on a special diet, like dairy-free, potato-free, no additives, things like that. So I'm shopping. I'm glad I knew this before now, just shopping consciously about it. But there's no difference between the two for me. And as Jim talked about it, the Dirty Dozen, look, if you're going to grow the Dirty Dozen to sell in your main grocery store, then they're going to have residue on them, whether they're commercial or conventional or organic grown, just because those types of crops are more intensive on their inputs to get something to market that people aren't going to go get squeamish at. Nobody wants to see bite marks or brown spots or things like that on their produce. So that's the biggest limitation, I think, for what the difference in all of this.
Is the look of the product?
Yes, the shelf life, look, this stuff is coming from all over. If I can digress a little bit, Omri has a list of products. Let's just stick with the Western Hemisphere. For North America, for Canada, Mexico, there's 9,000 products listed for organic crop livestock manufacturing production in the U.S. I don't know how many are in Canada, but they have their standards that are supposed to transfer between Canada and the U.S. The agreement between Mexico and the U.S., where we get a ton of produce from in the States here, that agreement between the U.S. and Mexico is going away this year, mostly because a lot of the stuff since when COVID started hasn't happened between the two countries as far as demand for organic produce from there, or the number of products that are approved organically in Mexico. So I know people are concerned about where their food comes from anyways, but a lot of the big produce packing houses and growers in the U.S. also own ground in Mexico. Walmart, Sam's Club, Costco, they own farms in both U.S. and Mexico. So like, you got to know that their standards are the same when they come across the border, and people seem to think that just because it's grown south of us that it's not. But that is, I don't believe that at all, especially living on the border and working in that environment. Yeah, that's my tangent. I'm sorry.
No, that helps a lot. I had
might
no
add-
idea. So Walmart and Sam's Club owns farms?
Yes.
I had no idea.
Costco, maybe it's Costco, not Sam's, but they do. And very popular produce brands that you'd go to your Kroger's or Vons or Safeway or things like that also sell to Costco, and yep, they're sourcing from, well, a lot of the same places.
So what if, kind of on the subject, but going back a little bit, I'm taken from what you guys say is that if we were to truly go organic, which I think what most people think when they say, at least what I used to think when it was organic years ago, until I found out different, was that there were no pesticides, no herbicides used. And so if that would be the case, could we feed the world if we use no herbicides and no pesticides?
No.
Would the yield would be so low that we couldn't feed the world?
Well, it's not sustainable. You only got so much crop ground that you could use, and irrigated crops here in the Columbia Basin, for example, we raise some of the highest quality, highest yielding potatoes in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just give you an example. One large grower that we took care of, Heinz, he had large contracts with them, lots and lots of acres. They wanted him to do 4 circles of organic. And so it took some time to plan that out. We did that. Like I said, the yield was 1/3. When the potatoes came out of the ground, they were not very pretty potatoes, but they were organic. So Heinz had their section of organic. Now, potatoes is not a crop that is very popular to raise organic. You're going to have to subsidize that grower to raise that crop. He's not going to make any money doing it. Now, Heinz guaranteed this guy that he would, but now you go to the processing side, and if you're going to, and that's where we talk about the dirty dozen, and all the rumors get started. Processed foods have some additives that don't come from the field, and now you start talking about nutrition differences. If there's some additives, preservatives in that food that they have to use to keep a shelf life, sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. That would be the difference. That would be an argument that I think you could have, you could stand on, that maybe you don't need all those additives, but then you got to keep fresh food on the shelves. So a lot more waste, a lot more waste. We waste so much food. So when you talk about going green and sustainability and things like that, no, we can't do much more than we're doing now on organic crops. You can run their numbers all you want, and I've listened to arguments, but it's not going to work to switch to organics
Completely.
Yes, or much more than we're doing now.
Yeah, and like say an apple or potato, you said potatoes are kind of hard to grow organically, and I think what you were talking about is because they get spots on them or something, right?
Well, I'll give you an example. Apples. Yeah. Apples is a good one. And forget the pesticides. There's plenty of pesticides, both organic and conventional. There's in hard water, irrigation water, you'll get spots, calcium deposits on the apple. The blemishes. It doesn't look nice. And it's got to go through a process. It takes a lot of cost to do that. So what we would do is we would inject sulfuric acid at a very, very small rate to clean up that hard water, those calcium deposits. The apple looked pretty. Now in organic, you cannot use sulfuric acid since it's a processed product. It's not a natural product. However, you can use citric acid, which is from other vegetables or things that but it goes through a certain process, but that's an approved process. We had to use 5 times the amount at about 5 times the cost to take those spots off the outside of the apples. That was just so the apples would look good. It has nothing to do with the pesticides. But there's your difference. You've got two acidic materials, one of them citric acid, one of them sulfuric acid, and one of them's improving, one's not. And the cost just went sky high.
And because people don't want to buy an apple that looks blemished.
That's right.
Even though it's not dangerous at all, it has no less nutrients. Right. And same with
fumigation and potatoes. If we don't fumigate, we get nematode blemishes on the potato. It looks like measles on a potato. Mm-hmm. You may have seen that. You try not to let those go into the stream. But fumigation is the only way that we can take care of nematodes in the soil. Now, there are good nematodes and bad nematodes, okay? The bad ones make blemishes on your potatoes. Make it like it's got measles. It's ugly. And when you slice into the outside skin, you've got a black spot. So I guess what I'm saying is you can pick and choose the ground. And if you pick very carefully, you can get by with organic crops for a while. But you're going to need to rotate that back into conventional to, quote, clean it up to get ready to go for another.
Do you agree with that, Jessica?
I'm sorry.
What was that?
Basically, Jim's saying you can't have organic soil completely all the time. You have to rotate back into conventional.
I think you'll run into problems. Yes.
That's interesting. I wish. I mean, you guys obviously worked for organic farmers or people that farmed organic. I wish we had a farmer on here to say, what they do, especially, do you guys know any farmer that farms only organic? That's all they have is organic soil.
No, you got some out of Quincy there. They may even watch this, but I don't know. Sam's one, I'm not going to mention his last name, but they have a small acreage and they do small lettuce. And I forget the name. They've got a brand, but he has small acreage. And they rotate into organics, and they do okay. But they have a specialized contract on only certain crops that they can do that. But they know their ground. They know that ground was fumigated 5 years ago. It's going to be good to go for this particular crop.
That's very, very interesting.
There's a big farm down in Arizona, but they're large enough. I think it's more doable the more acreage that you have to stay in that production longer, because if you're serving a really large market, commercial market with those products, then and you've got the ground to rotate. Like even if you were just growing conventional all on its own, like you can't plant the same crop over and over and over and over and over again. Yeah, you run into disease issues and things like that. So it's part of it anyways. But there's a gal that I grew up with and graduated with in Central Oregon that they do organics, but they are crops and livestock in a rotational situation with a CSA that they sell everything very local there in Oregon, but it's not huge acreage. And it's limited to the climate and what they can grow there.
Right. So Janet, you had a question?
Well, I mean, we kind of covered part of this, but coming from the farming background, I don't know how even 3 years is going to take all those chemicals out of the ground if your neighbor's watering. Especially in the irrigation thing. Is there leakage of those chemicals into your place or into your crop? And especially if you have one that's only so many feet from, somebody else or your own crops that are not organic. I mean, to me, there would be travel of those products. From logically speaking, I'm thinking that, even just in the Columbia Basin, with all the wind that we have, I mean, how do you keep that from not happening?
Most of the products, and Jennifer, I'll just talk for a second. They're not long-lived like they used to be. We used to have soil active products that lasted a long time. I go back to chlordane. It lasted in the soil for 15, 20 years. You can pick it up in carrots. Those products are no longer used. The organophosphates, those were the toxic ones, but they weren't very long-lived in the environment. Now, physical drift is going to always be an issue. And ideally, you would have a buffer zone between organic and conventional. But again, when you're raising lettuce, and you got to spray it on the ground, you don't get any drift.
Right.
So in the Columbia Basin, where we're putting products on through a pivot, and you see the drift.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but we're changing that too, because we're going to drop nozzles. We want the irrigation to be more efficient. We want it on the ground, not in the air, and so that's changing as well. But as far as cross-contamination, you could find anything you wanted in parts per billion and quadrillion.
Yeah.
But it's at what level? And EPA sets those levels, okay? And USDA has tests food well enough that I'm very satisfied that you're not getting contaminants in organic crops from conventional products.
And so here's what, I'm a capitalist, and I always say this, and I've got nothing wrong with people wanting to pay extra to eat organic. One of the reasons for this podcast is just to educate them that there are pesticides, there are chemicals used on these crops that are organic. It's just different chemicals from what I understand. And I've got nothing wrong with farmers making more money doing it if they can make more money doing it. I got nothing wrong with people buying it. I just want people to be educated so they know they can make the choice if it's worth it or not. To me, we don't eat organic. I think first and foremost, you should probably just eat good food in the first place instead of eating McDonald's and fast food and all that. Just eat whole foods in the first place and you'd be better off. And maybe organic is just icing on the cake. But we don't necessarily stay away from organic because sometimes it's all you can get in the store. Sometimes you see, and it is more expensive. And we don't gravitate towards organic. We just try to eat good, healthy, whole foods in the first place. Jessica, what about you?
Sometimes I'll grab it because it doesn't have the additives in it that other food has in it, if that makes any sense.
Like what additives?
Just preservatives. Any kind of shelf life type preservatives I'm going to call them cheap fillers. Sometimes cheap fillers and flavorings, just getting away from that on some foods. But for the most part, I don't buy. I won't buy it. On occasion, I'll find it cheaper. I'll be like, "Hey, I'll get that." But
that's too. It's about price to us. So
right,
organic and conventional, right there. If the organic's cheaper, I'll buy it. I mean, I think that's what happens in a free market. It's based on price, quality, service is always in there, but not in this product. But quality and price. So if the price gets too high, I don't think anybody would buy organic.
Right.
I would say not anybody, but obviously if it got too high, it definitely price other people out. So.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I heard you're going to talk.
I had another one that I don't know if you know about, but wanted to bring up. So it's marketing, right? If you were going to ask me that everything that we, if it's all whole food or whatever, everything we eat, it's all organic. It's all a carbon chained organism, right? But so now you've got these marketing buzzwords and things like that. Yeah. Which I think is the biggest part of it. And then you got stuff that, no antibiotics, no hormones, no blah, 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 blah. In livestock organic production for your meat, no antibiotics. You'd have to take them out of your operation. You could sell them conventionally, just on the regular market. Dairy, however, you can use approved antibiotics twice a year and still keep that cow in your organic production.
And that's just confusing. It's
Yeah,
very confusing.
And I think that totally blow a lot of people's mind. Not every organic dairy farm does it, but it is allowable under USDA standards and practices for that. So just, it's so hard because we have to go to work here, to make a living, to go buy our food, and you just shop fast usually or online and don't pay attention. So they're on top of it with those buzzwords that catch your attention and get you to purchase your products, and it might not always be what you think it is or the best thing for you.
I like how you said, and from a chemical standpoint, being a pharmacist and going through organic chemistry, literally the definition of organic means it has a carbon chain in it. So there is how we have this debate over organic, non-organic, conventional. I mean, if it has a carbon chain in it, it's organic. But that's a scientific definition, not a food definition.
I know.
Yeah,
but therein lies more confusion.
Yes.
I'll mention, being born and raised out here in Block 16, North Pasco, we had 4,000 head of feedlot cattle as well. And at times we had cow-calf operation. But when it comes to antibiotics, you have a death loss, okay? And if you can't vaccinate or use antibiotics on animals, minimal as possible, your death loss is going to be higher.
Of course.
Now, I'm not talking about cutting into profit. I'm talking about humane way of raising animals, okay? And people have to realize that if you sacrifice an input that's for the health of an animal, that animal may die. And so especially calves, that's why we would give them antibiotics right off the bat. But and then when it came to inputs into those animals, it was silage, corn, and alfalfa, and we mixed certain feeds. We didn't do pasture. Pasture would have taken a lot longer to get that animal to weight. So we were raising meat, okay, and we were trying to keep the death loss at 2 and 3%. But I know that it can jump up to 5 and 8% if you don't use those inputs that were designed. Now, there's no question that in the old days we used too many of those things, but it was for the health of the animal, just like the health of a baby, okay? You're going to use certain things that I don't want to go into vaccinations, okay? I don't want to use you have to talk about it and be wise about it. That's all I'm saying.
Right. I think where we're going with this too is that, what's reality and what is humane. Because personally, I would prefer that animal be treated in a manner that was humane, not just the bottom line. I mean, it doesn't make sense not to treat them if they're ill or need, prevention. That doesn't make sense at all.
So I appreciate you guys being on today and helping educate us and our listeners and viewers. As we wind this podcast up, the fun part of the show, Jessica, I want you to tell us what your passion is.
Oh man, my passion right now is raising my daughter and hunting.
I love it.
I can't raise both. That's what I'm doing.
And taking your daughter hunting, right?
My daughter has been hunting since I was pregnant with her. So 4 months along, she goes on every single hunt. And she's about 10 feet away from me when I just took my turkey a couple weeks ago. And so it's, my parents took me everywhere with them doing everything. As long as she wants to go, I'll take her and educate her. So
I love it. I love seeing your post on Facebook with her hunting with you guys.
That's cool.
Yeah. It's fun.
And Jim, outside of motocross racing, what is your passion?
My wife and I like to travel, and we're about to embark on that again. When we first retired, we took a trip down to the Gulf in the motorhome, and we pulled the Jeep behind us, and we had a lot of fun.
That would be fun.
But we got ourselves a little lapdog now. It's like and so she goes wherever we go. I mean, wherever we go. And she fits in a little purse when we take her in places we shouldn't take her into, but just keep traveling. And then what I can't stay away from is on social media, when I see people abusing, sometimes it's a privilege. When I see facts that are wrong, I tend to address that, and it's very confrontational sometimes. I don't get mean like some people do, but I don't stand for misinformation, I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you
still doing this.
Yeah, and that's why we're here, because you jumped in on my organic post, and I totally appreciate it, because we just
look at my I did a bee thing on LinkedIn and Facebook. You might want to take a look at that. We're the old thing that we're losing all of our bees. That's not true. Just it never was true. John Stossel did a really good video on
That's good to know, because I believe I don't do my own research, I guess, enough, and I just believe we are losing bees. But then, just critically or rationally thinking about it, what are the chances that we're really going to be losing bees? I mean, we haven't been able, you guys can know in the farming industry that we have to use poisons to kill insects. We can't get rid of them. So why would the bees be going away?
Well, they blamed it on neonicotinoids, but that's not true. There was colony collapse disorder. Take a look at it. I don't. There's lots of sides to the argument, but the truth finally came out. Bee numbers are up 30%. They were never down as low as what they said, but the misinformation was out there, and it was too late. But John Stossel did a very good.
I like John Stossel.
Short video. Take a look at it.
I will. I definitely will. I mean, I want to follow you on LinkedIn too, Jim. I'm not following you on LinkedIn, so I need to do that.
Be careful.
Hey, Jim, do you know Bill Cobb?
Yes, absolutely.
Bill and I are great friends.
Oh, Bill.
No.
He's gone on longer than I could have. What that guy's we didn't know it. I was semi-retired doing some consulting, and I met him at a meeting. Again, I hadn't seen him in a while, and he said, "Are you involved in a blueberry drift situation over in Skagit County on a railroad?" I said, "Well, yeah. Why do you ask?" I said, "I can only tell you so much." He said, "Well, I'm on the other side." So,
oh gosh,
we're all headed for court, but he's much more of an expert than I. He's got the qualifications. I did the physical numbers and things to prove that it could happen. But long story short, Bill's one of the best guys out there, and he's still at it. And he's got to be 10 years older than me, I think.
I don't know. He's up there. I'll say it to his face too. He's up there.
After 70, it doesn't matter.
Well, I want to thank you guys for being on our podcast today. You've helped us realize our goal, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. And you guys have helped us realize that goal. So thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having us.
And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Monday. Monday is Memorial Day. Tune in Tuesday, our regularly scheduled podcast, 12:30 to 1:30 Pacific Standard Time. Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Thank you.